News Tech Extended Chat, where we do extended discussion on the headlines from past week. And we also talk about some of the things that we're going to be covering in the upcoming week in news tech. We have on the call with us from our publisher support team at Our Hometown. These folks are working with local newspapers every day, and they're going to share some insight on their perspective of today's headlines. We've got Terry, Vera, and Tyler calling in. Welcome, everyone.
Hello.
Afternoon.
Hello. Afternoon, Vera. Hey, Tyler. All right, great. So I'm going to pass it over to Tyler here for our first story, because this is one that you covered for Today in News Tech, which is a new resource that we launched at Our Hometown, day-to-day coverage of news technology industry, where innovation is happening in digital media. So we're covering different types of news reports. So I'll just pass this over to Tyler to give us a quick introduction on this story.
All right, so this was basically a recap of the reporting from What's New in Publishing about a new report that came out of a test about U.S. media consumption. It kind of broke down the big statistics, and we can go into a little more detail.
Perfect. Yeah, sounds good. Let's just listen to the overview, and then we'll talk about how this impacts local publishers.
News media and consumers' online attention. Today, we're highlighting a piece from What's New in Publishing, breaking down the latest U.S. media consumption report from a test. The article, U.S. Media Consumption Trends, Tectonic Shifts Emerge, discusses the broad strokes of the report, detailing statistics about which platforms have grown in popularity and how frequently various demographics use them. While there's a lot of information to parse, there are a few key findings that news publishers should be aware of. 93% of Americans now spend some portion of their day on social media, making it the country's most popular medium.
They're saying 93% of Americans spend some portion of the day on social media, making it the most popular medium. That's not a number that I've heard before. I mean, I believe it, but it's kind of shocking when you hear that. And we also hear, as we're going to in a minute, some of the numbers in legacy media, 18 for print and 20 for digital. So I guess the thing to take away from this is you've got to be on social media. You've got to take advantage of that audience. And we talked about it last week in that article that broke down the audience by platform, and Facebook is the leading one. This is talking about all social media. So now it makes sense. The 93% is not shocking at all, because they're talking about any type of social media.
It kind of brings me back to that piece we covered last week about the paper that was publishing on WhatsApp. Like, it's the entire principle of needing to meet readers where they are. And this is where readers are.
Yep, absolutely. You've got to be there, but you got to be smart about how you're there. I mean, if you're going to do the WhatsApp model, which is part of Facebook, so it's they basically are just publishing free news on Facebook. You've got to have some type of revenue model behind that. And they might be nonprofit, but they've also got advertisers in there. And so, yeah, I mean, if you can still sell an audience, you can build that audience anywhere. And it could be on social media, as long as you present it to the advertiser in a nice, succinct way. I remember years ago hearing about building rate cards. We don't really do a lot of this anymore, but publishers used to ask for help on this. And, we always used to say that you've got to describe your total reach, which is all your Facebook followers. Just take that number, add it to your Twitter followers and monthly uniques on the website, and just add those into one number, because advertisers can understand that. Now, let's continue on here to some of these other stats.
Here are the key points from a publisher's perspective. Only 33% of consumers subscribe to news media. Roughly 18% have print news subscriptions, while 20% subscribe to their news digitally. The past year has seen an increase from 48% to 56% of consumers who regularly listen to podcasts, showing that the medium is still growing in popularity.
Okay, of course, I'm going to stop it there, because we're always talking about podcasting. So again, this is higher than legacy media is focused on. I mean, a lot of them are just focused on the things that they've always been concerned about, used to really pay. But if they look at the actual stats and where their audience is, they're just not there anymore. They're shifting. So, you've got to be smart about how you migrate the business model, right? You can't just start putting up all your news as podcasts on a free platform, but we've got the tools for that. So we can, turn everything into audio and then have it all behind the paywall. So we've got kind of solutions for all that worked out already. Now, these stats, I don't think they surprise you, Tyler, because you've actually done a couple articles on this lately. It's a number I feel like we heard recently from another report.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really fascinating the amount that podcasting is growing. Like it's
Right.
growing at a faster rate than I think a lot of people have expected. And
Right.
there's been a ton of reporting.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that makes it a good time to get in because, there's just a lot of hype around it. So not only is the audience going to be there, it's already there more than it has ever been before. And there are tools out there to make it, economically sustainable. I think a lot of people shy away from it when they think about the process for recording, which is daunting. I'll say it gets easier. I'll definitely say like creating a podcast and creating videos on a regular basis, it gets easier the more you do it, but getting started is always the hardest part. At our hometown, it's always been our philosophy that if we can do it with technology, get it there in high quality, something that's easy to understand, that's been reflected in all of our major products. If you look at PDF to HTML conversion, day one, that wasn't always perfect in the same way that audio articles isn't perfect. But if you can get it there in this new format, and back then it was structured text in HTML so that the SEO search engines could, find it. It's okay if there's typos here and there. And those, of course, were corrected very quickly. We got it out there before it was 100% and kind of led the industry. And that also helped us develop the technology. It's like a mirror 25 years later into this company. We're doing it again in this new exciting area of audio content.
Don't forget automation.
Right. Yeah, it's got to be automated. Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much the key to both of those things. I mean, it's PDF to HTML isn't technically automated. It is people doing a lot of it on our end, but from the publisher's perspective, it's automated, and that's really what counts. But the audio articles is truly a computer doing that.
I would also just add there was that article we covered a few weeks ago now
Right.
that because it's growing so fast, there is a lot of heat behind advertising on podcasts
Right.
and audio.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's the thing is like, could it be that advertisers are most drawn to a growing field? I don't know. You get to a certain point where a market is so huge, then the price of the ad is going to equally balloon. It's going to rise after the market is maxed out. That maybe that has something to do with the fever behind that.
I think
Yeah.
also part of it is that we sometimes forget advertisers are also consumers. Advertisers, they are part of this 56% of consumers regularly listen to podcasts.
So they're an audience member. They're hearing the ads as they exist now, which a lot of them are host read ads. And they're thinking, you know what? I just listened to that whole ad pretty attentively because this podcast host that I like read it. They're usually fairly long. That's the manual format. With automated podcasting, everything's shorter the way we do it. The individual episodes are short and the ads are super short. People are tuning in. You're going to look different than other advertisers just by being in a podcast. People are going to think of you differently. I certainly do. I mean, there's certain advertisers, Casper mattresses, or certain affiliate advertisers that are on like every podcast. And it's like, wow, those marketing people know what they're doing. And then they just have like a affiliate code at the end. Use coupon code Rogan for 10% off your toothbrush or whatever. I think I actually learned about, what are they called? Quip electric toothbrushes on a podcast. And I have bought things from podcasts, which is crazy. So they work. That's a really good point there to highlight.
Platforms have entered the market. National news sites account for 19% of Americans' web traffic.
Okay, as other platforms have entered the market. So they're talking about as other social media has opened up, basically the
Yeah.
news
more or
sites
less
have dropped to 19.
I think that's a pretty good number. And the keywords there are national news, but it's also, to me, it's an indicator of Americans' increased appetite for news. And that easily translates to local news. 1/5 of web market or of web traffic searching for news. That's a really good statistic.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that you could say from this stuff. I mean, there's no doubt that there's a demand for news, and there always will be. It's just, and people have been saying that for years. Like they've been kind of saying it to themselves, like reassuring. Like there's no doubt about that. You don't even need to question it. It's just, how is it going to be produced? I guess. At our hometown, we kind of do have this vision for something that could be a very digital centric, very multimedia workflow that I think would allow you to gain access to all these audiences. You've got the web traffic because you've got a website, you're on podcasts, you're on social media. So you get the 93%. And you've got this legacy audience, which is super loyal, usually older, certainly the print subscribers, but even the digital subscribers to newspaper websites are going to skew older, at least at this point. We've got to capture that younger audience by bridging the gap between social media and the website, and then maybe even all the way to the print. So yeah, this is really relevant to another article I want to show you guys. So let's finish this up.
With more outlets vying for people's attention than ever, the study shows how important it is to represent your newsroom on every possible platform. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a fire hose of information. There has been something known as the great unbundling. That's I don't know if it's the great, it's the unbundling of local news is the term. And if we have time, I'll look at that article, because what's happened is the local newspaper used to do everything. They were the business directory, they were advertiser, they managed advertisements, they did news, they did weather, local events, literally everything. Now you've got apps for weather, which people are deferring to. I mean, I defer personally. I will go to weather.com over the Salt Lake City Tribune to look at their little weather icon. So, they're still putting it there, and they're trying to still be the one-stop shop for people, but they just aren't. People go elsewhere for certain things, but there are certain things that you can only get from the newspaper. And that's what we'll talk about, what the findings of this study is. It's really interesting. And it corresponds with a lot of the headlines that we've been seeing lately. Okay, this article is from the Reuters Institute. I've been reading a lot of this. I think you've been getting a bunch of articles from here too, Tyler. This is a cool resource. And they just did this study. Okay, so this is from the Reuters Institute. It's an interview that digests the 2021 digital news report. And I don't think we've talked about this in any videos yet. It's really interesting. This publisher actually is doing a lot of the things that I really admire. They've got a very active podcast. It's a long form kind of interview based format, but it's not even that long, like 15-minute episodes. And, they're an institute doing all this research into the industry. And I want to play the last few minutes of this podcast episode because they're interviewing this Dr. Ann Schultz, and she did the study. And basically, I mean, there's all these stats where they kind of looked at where do people go to get information? Okay, local coronavirus information. Where do they go for that? In different countries. I think they did like 38 countries in total. But so like these are the types of information that are, I guess, searched for in these countries. Local weather is the big one for the USA, I guess. And then there's other graphs. That one I haven't really studied. This one I've looked at more. Proportion that thinks each is the best source of news for different local topics. Okay. And this one is, I guess, just across all 38 markets. So this is worldwide, but local announcements, the local newspaper leads. I mean, almost 50% of people think that's the best source. I think that's cool. So that's, kind of school things, government announcements, I guess, events, probably business events, crime, economy, sport. It's pretty much the leader. But then, you can look at the breakdown. Local TV is the competitor that was the first competitor that started eating it. Well, it was radio, I guess, before that. They started eating into the newspaper market and unbundling that, so the newspaper wasn't the only source of this stuff. Local crime. Yeah. So, I mean, pretty much the newspaper is doing better than TV and radio, according to this stat. But again, this is worldwide. Let's look at the US. This is another breakdown proportion that thinks each is the best source of news. And so just news, and then they break it down by specific topic. Norway, papers got a great reputation and they seem to be doing very well. But the US, this is what they look like. So they're kind of they're not as bad as Chile, but the fact is in our market, the US, where our customers primarily are, this is what they're dealing with. In this case, TV's beating them out in quite a few cases. What else we got here? Search engines. 21% in the US, 21% of people go to the newspaper for things to do. 19% go to search engines. So we're kind of like evenly matched there. There is one topic, and it's local politics, that is really a unique strength for newspapers. And as we've seen in other stories that we've covered lately, when the newspapers go out of business, it's the politics that get out of control. There's the check and balance that you lose there. You get more corruption from not just politicians, but also local corporations. So let's just listen to this author quickly talk for the last few minutes about her, I don't know, what she sees for the future of newspapers.
Lastly, based on the research and your experience on working on this topic for a few years now, this is such a complex, of course, context for local news, also due to the small markets and willingness to pay by audiences where it's very difficult to build sustainable models. Based on your research and experience, what should local news outlet who really want to stand out from these many alternative sources of information should focus on?
Super difficult question. I think what I can say is that what we see in this data is what we also refer to in the report as the unbundling of local news. So while especially the local newspaper traditionally performed many jobs for readers, and they still do, of course, many users in many countries in our survey now find that other sources are better able to perform these jobs. So against this backdrop, I think it will be very hard for local media to maybe, if not impossible, actually, to drive demand for their product via these sort of topics. So what they are left with to monetize their businesses on are only these few topics like local politics, health issues, the local economy, local businesses. So a way forward could be to double down on these rather than trying to provide information on all topics and in this sense try and channel the resources that they have. But of course, none of this will be easy in the current financial environment. But I think it's critically important to avoid a situation where local governments and local politicians are not subject to scrutiny from local media. So while I think this might be less of an issue, that the local paper is no longer considered the best source for the weather, it will be crucial for local journalism and also, of course, local communities around the world not to lose the battle over political information.
Okay, I just thought that was so well put, and it clicked a number of things for me. Like I said earlier, this is totally this jives with everything that we've seen elsewhere with the news deserts and constant reports of higher fees from malfeasance and violations. after a newspaper closes from, local businesses and industry, they're going to just start to cheat a little bit more. So it's also just funny to me that they're like, she concludes like, these are, keeping an eye on local politicians. It's a critical thing that, everyone recognizes that we need, but that's really all that we want you for now. We don't really need you for any of this stuff. Although I think these three things, whether I just don't see it, but local politics, local coronavirus, and local health information, definitely. Who better cover that than someone in the community? And then things to do. Well, that's Norway again. I guess just comparing to search engines, like I see them as the main competition. I don't really see TV and radio as any more competition than other newspapers. They're kind of all in the same bucket. It's really, social media and search engines that we're competing with. And, let's let them do what they do well. And, if you can't beat them, join them. But they're not going to be able to cover politics and get the interviews with, town board or whoever you need to talk to. I just think newspapers need to recognize what they're best at. Do you guys have any comments on that? Just having worked with a lot of mom and pop weeklies.
I do, of course.
You should jump in earlier. I don't mean to just keep talking. Go ahead.
Oh, no. Just that question. I think one advantage of the local print is, yes, they're in a position to keep politicians and businesses accountable, but they also have the space if they are online, where news programs, TV, radio, they don't have the space. They're limited by time.
Right.
Local newspapers, they have, an allotment of print room, but if they're online, they can really, really expand their coverage of these topics.
Right. Yeah. And I guess, would you expand on that? Like, how would they, I have my own ideas, but how would they expand in that way? Like you're saying there's all this bandwidth that we have to work with,
Right. They're not limited by column width or
or time, like between commercial breaks, like on the TV.
And they can also update things daily, where in print, they're limited to once a week, maybe a couple times a week.
Right.
They can update their website daily.
Right. Yeah. Right. And the search engines are definitely going to reward them for that. So, if you can be the source of local politics and local health information and let's just say business news, like local business news. If you can be that in the reader's mind, then if that's what they want to find, they type in your URL, it's a direct link in, that's great. But then over time, if you're smart about your marketing, you can get, this traffic from, that's the audience that's going to the search engine to find their answer. You can get them to still come to you through the search engine. If, we do our indexing all right. And
even TV, Matt. If somebody sees something on TV, they see a 15-second spot on TV, or a council meeting or something like that.
Well, right.
Information. It's like, wait a minute. They said this person said that. Where's the follow-up? Let's check out the website.
Oh yeah. There's some
Facebook. Let's check out, Instagram.
Right.
And drive people to your website where you have unlimited room to really force accountability in your local area.
Right. Yeah. I think the reason TV in the US is more popular, 10% more popular for politics and, quite a bit more popular for coronavirus, weather. I think it's just it's kind of more passive. It's video. They can just sit there and watch the report and get all four of these things just as they're getting ready for work. The newspaper can do that too, though. You know, they can have the audio playlists. They can get into video, but I understand the barrier to entry to video is high. It's like, if you don't know anything about video editing, it can seem overwhelming, but you know, I think, the hands-free passive experience of getting the news is what makes TV and used to make radio good. But wow, Germany seems to like radio more than anyone. But yeah, anyway, there's definitely an opportunity here. And this type of stuff is like the stuff that Kevin Slimp does on like the local level. You know, he'll have these focus groups and ask them about the paper. What do they like? What kind of coverage? What do they like about the design? But this is like worldwide, you know, stats. So pretty interesting. I don't know if we want to look to the Europe as the future of the US, or if we're not going in that direction, if we're going away from it, I don't know. But anyway, that was a pretty interesting article. Any other thoughts on that? Sorry.
Yeah, I just think that the portion of the interview where what was her name? Schultz.
Yes.
Time to double down on these things. And like you said, let the, you know, weather apps do the weather. Fine. You know, you have a little 3x3 square on your front page that says, this is what we expect this week, but that's about all you need.
Right.
But really the in-depth stuff that matters to your community is the thing that, like she said, double down on that.
Right.
You're not going to lose. You're just not going to lose.
Right. Well, in order to double down, the only loss is that you can't do everything that you once did, but this is a guide for what to cut, I think.
Exactly.
You know, cut national news. Like you don't need to be writing, I mean, unless it's like, you know, really ties in a local element, you know, and there's some impact on the local level. You know, you want to be covering local politics. It's not just politics. You know, we certainly don't need to be talking about the White House in the local newspaper, and not even republishing AP content. You know, you don't. They'll go to the national news source if that's what they want. You're wasting space.
Exactly.
Yeah, you could be writing more about latest trends in whatever vaccinations or availability, things to do. Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. Use your space wisely. And I think every publisher is conscious of that. We're just say that, but
all we're doing is giving them some stats here that they may not be aware of. That they're probably just, you know,
maybe
in their
just
mind
confirmation for them. Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's a confirmation bias that you can fall into.
Okay, I'm doing the right thing.
Right. Yeah, let's switch to this. Yeah. I don't know if we're gonna have as much time to discuss last week's articles. Let's do this one here. I think it was this one. Local News Unbundled. Wait a second. Oh, I already had this one up actually. We can either do that one. Oh yeah, it was this one. Attracting. Okay, let's do this one first because I think this is pretty neat because I had a different order in mind for these, but there wasn't any real reason for it. I like that we can just kind of go with the flow because there's a lot of overlapping topics. So we want to kind of thread them together. Okay. And so that article, you know, is kind of about serving the needs of, what are people interested in? What are they looking for? And you know what? Oh, well, there's two articles that are kind of related to this, but okay. This one is from neimanlab.org. So this is going to be an isolated video for next week. So let me do a quick intro for this. Hold on. Okay. Today in news tech, attracting, converting, and retaining light readers. This is from NeimanLab.org, where Sarah Shire reports on local media association, the International News Media Association. They put out a report that talks about something that we discuss quite a bit in here. And Terry, you actually brought an article to us about zombie subscribers, and they go into that here. So let's just look at the actual article so I can find some points. So what the main point of this is that you need to be, and this is sort of something that we touch on, but I also say the kind of the opposite sometimes. I also make this point that when it comes to pricing your subscriptions or just the idea of having a paywall, when you're thinking about having a paywall, if you don't already, the first thing I say to that publisher is, look, there's going to be some fraction of your audience that's going to subscribe no matter what. There's some people out there, they just need digital access. They need the most convenient access they can get. Maybe they're in the government. They just need access to your archives literally for their job. So putting up a paywall, you can get that core audience, and you're always going to have that core audience, and you should be thinking about them. But I don't think a lot about these light readers, as they refer to them. And these are like the casual, infrequent, picky consumers of news. Really, I think of this as kind of like the younger generation, primarily of news readers. I think people that are younger have shorter attention spans. I mean, I certainly feel like I do than older generations. And I'm kind of on the older end of the millennial thing. Technically, I guess I'm a millennial, but I don't, I feel like I'm definitely should be maybe in the older generation because I don't, I'm not as much, I don't know, I'm making this too much about me, but the point is younger people are, watching 30-second videos on TikTok and Instagram, and that's the attention span. It's just the reality. So they don't necessarily say that it's younger people here, and it doesn't really matter for the point that they're trying to make. But I do think they are, if you read between the lines, they're talking about getting the next generation of readers. And these are the light readers. And they're trying to bust this myth that light readers just won't buy. And they kind of give me this visual, which is interesting. I don't usually think of it. I usually focus on this group. Again, this is like the core audience. And if we look at some of the rollouts that we've done, like with the Acorn, their first month, I poured over their data, like month by month, the number of subscribers they got, and broke it down. The first month was the best month by far. And I think the number of subscribers they got that 1 month, was more than they had gotten certainly any other single month. I forget. It was just an incredible uptake in the first month, but that was just because those are the people that would have subscribed no matter what. And they actually did have a discount in the intro month. And the publisher in retrospect kind of regretted that because he's like, look, we already got these people. They would have bought it full price. We should have saved the discount to get the late adopters or even the occasional buyers. And I think, so anyway, that's a real world example, but this theoretical thing, I think there's a lot to this. And if you look at it, it's a standard distribution. So, the majority of your revenue potential is under the late adopters and the occasional buyers. So, I don't know. Let's pause here. Any comments on this from you guys, having worked with local newspaper publishers? I mean, is there anything
I have
you can
something.
relate to there? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Generation X.
Right.
But even me, I like to skim. I want the meat
Right.
and potatoes of the story. I
Right.
have a lot going on in my life. I don't want to read the
Right.
article. And I think that's the problem with a lot of the audience. They just want the substance. They don't
Right.
want the flowery context. But I think what our publishers are doing, right, those especially using the audio articles aspect, is it breaks that long article that you would read. And some people read faster than others,
Right.
and break it into increments. So you have a long article that might only just be maybe 30 seconds. That gives you everything in context you can listen to while you're doing other things. So I just wanted to bring that. And that would actually, I think, we are getting a lot of subscribers because of those features, because people don't have time to do things.
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think making it easy to get the bottom line story, just making it easy to get the news, whatever, making it accessible in multiple formats, is going to encourage people to, more people to take it up. But yeah, I think you're right. It's not a generational thing so much. I mean, people that are born and raised in this tech infested and, information coming at you all the time environment, they are going to definitely end up different. And I don't know. I feel like if they've never, gotten through an entire book, it wouldn't surprise me. Some of these people, they just, the attention span is so bad. And it's honestly, this is getting like really personal here, but like I started reading again because I've just completely lost that as a habit. And it was weird getting back into it. I got to say, like, just sitting with a physical book, it's just a totally different experience than reading anything online where, your attention can just get pulled away in an instant.
I'll tell you, my kids bought me a Kindle for Christmas. And
Yeah.
I love it. I've actually gotten into reading again.
Got back into, see that, isn't that the best thing? It's like, yeah.
It really is. Turn off the noise and read a book.
Yeah.
And this Kindle, I don't even know what it is, but I've actually caught myself trying to turn the page. It's so much like a real book. I just love the thing. And I never ever thought I'd say that.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's a good example, because I think that's like the best way that you could have a book, because it's lightweight. You can have thousands of books in there, but you can't easily browse. What's that?
You don't have to dust them off every week.
Yeah, right. Exactly. The space, it has all the benefits of digital, but it's without the distraction. Because is there a web browser in the normal Kindle? I don't think so, right?
Well, in the one I have, there is, yeah.
There is. Okay, yeah. I would do everything I could to keep that off. I would like uninstall that.
It's just I've just got my books on there, and I love it.
Right.
Love it.
Well, that's cool. Yeah. So
I think you're right, though, because when you said that you'd be surprised if somebody read a certain age group read a whole book. One thing about the Kindle and anything digital, I guess, is you don't have an inch thickness worth of pages to go through. You're just on one page and it's just flip.
Right.
So it's not so daunting. It's not such a challenge.
When you don't see how much you have left to go. Yeah. Right. Interesting. Yeah. I have read a couple of things on e-readers. It didn't really take for me, but that's not, could have been any number of reasons for that. But I feel like we have a risk of sounding a little ageist and a little bit like elitist, like looking down on younger people. I'm sure younger people read long form stuff. It's just, there's not really a need to anymore for so many things.
Right. That's just it.
I would also just add a lot of things aren't designed to be long form anymore.
Right. Exactly. And why is that? Like chicken or the egg? Is it because of the audience becoming shorter attention span, or is it just they no longer need to tell stories. That this may be why. Think about it. Like if you want to produce something back in the 50s, you'd have to write something significant enough to get approved by a publisher. And, it doesn't make sense to print like a really thin book that's like 2 pages. And that's what a blog post is now. So you can just do so many little things. And then your body of work is all these blog posts and all this social media presence. And that's how I think of today in news tech. Like we're trying to build up a body of work that's reflected across multiple platforms and, down the archives of those platforms. It's not like a book. We're not writing a book.
Right.
We're never going to do that.
A lot of it is the world's gotten smaller, so to speak.
Yeah. More connected.
Information. They don't just want information. They want all of the information. That means tidbits, you're either going to get 50% from one place, 50% from another, or you're going to get increments of 1% here, 2% there, all in the same amount of time as you would have just those 2 other items. Does that make sense? So
that's interesting. So, but you're talking about 2% from like different social networks or what exactly? Yeah. Wherever you might.
If you've got 15 minutes to consume, let's just say news.
Right.
15 minutes. Are you going to spend 15 minutes on watching TV? Or are you going to break that up and you're going to hit Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, print, podcasts, audio? You're going to get as much news from as many sources as you can in that short amount of time.
Yes. You got your 3 or 4 apps. I mean, I know I do. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of automatically flip through them when I've got some downtime just to see what's new.
Right.
And so but what you just said is interesting. This is turning into a cool conversation, really, like when we don't stick to the articles so much. And we're not going to have time to finish everything. But do people really sit down and say, I want to read the news now? I feel like most people just get on Facebook and they see news most of the time. It's not 100% thing, but there are going to be some times where I search Salt Lake City news. It's mainly about an event. I'm searching for a specific thing, like a fire that I heard about or something. So I am searching for news, but I'm not just searching for all the news. I'm not just saying, give me all the news in my area.
Right.
So it's weird. Like you got to reach people. These small touch points across multiple platforms, across different, positions in the news feed, you're trying to just catch their attention. Right. And the value of the attention has skyrocketed because everyone's trying to get it. The demand is so high, and everyone's connected all the time now. Much more so now than 2 years ago, I think. All right. So this is probably the best article to end it on. I mean, there's a lot of stuff we covered this week on Facebook that was pretty cool, but let's just talk about this. Again, focused on local publishers, catering to light readers. They talk about one point they make in here. It reminded me of something that was said earlier. As a news publisher, you are an avid consumer of news, right? A local news publisher, they read other local papers, they read national, they're just readers. So they're not like these people. They're not like the light readers. They maybe have a lot in common with the core audience, that, teeny little part of the graph here.
That graph really surprised me. Just what you said, the casual readers, look how big that is.
Well, I don't know exactly how quantitative this is. I think it's mainly just a schematic to represent, but like the data, maybe it is based on some numbers, but yeah, I think it's mainly just making the point that it's an iceberg. When you think of your audience, the core audience is the part, coming up out of the water. It's really the vast majority of the opportunity is underwater, but it's harder to get to. So let's look at some of these stats before we end this. Good news. Okay. So, they do mention that subscriptions went up last year when everything was shut down and people were eager to get local coronavirus information. So that kind of reinforces that study.
I think this also mentions that subscriptions were up in comparison to before Corona also, didn't it? Which was a surprise to everybody.
Even as, wait, before now compared to before coronavirus. So in other words, it spiked and then it stayed up higher than it was before.
Right. They expected that they expected a drop as Corona kind of waned, but
right.
it hasn't dropped, and it was a surprise to everybody.
Yeah, right. It was, we definitely expected it to go back to normal, but I don't know. There's probably a lot of factors behind that. Now, this is from a paywall company called Piano that I've heard about before. I think New York Times might use them, and they seem to be really good at focusing on like the funnel and retaining subscribers. But anyway, 58%, they had 58% more online subscribers on average than at the end of 20. Oh, that's what you just said. Okay, there's the number. Okay, so that's not actually what I was looking for, but that's good to know. So to sustain growth, news organizations have to figure out how to keep light readers happy. Okay. Where is this now?
It said the majority of the conversion came from light readers. So
right.
Does it say in here how they did that?
Interesting. Mixed up here.
There it is.
Okay.
Paragraph. The
right. But
this cohort grows the longer that you're in the market.
So
well, you had better start loving these light readers.
Yeah, right. Let's figure out some like action. Okay. Well, I think they studied a ton of different papers, so I don't know if they really break down specific strategies, but they do talk about some things. So catering to light readers, they're just they're just kind of making the point that they're not like you. They're more selective on what they choose. So you kind of need to tailor the product somewhat to more selective people.
Right. That comes back to those focus groups too. Yeah.
Right. I mean, to me, it's also, I kind of got to hit the brakes on that a little bit a second, because I'm thinking as a publisher, how do I implement that? Like what they make the point in here is that your core audience is going to read the stuff that the light audience will read. That's what they say. So by making it more, maybe putting like a bullet point list of the main take home points of your article at the top of the story, that will help the light readers get more out of the story quicker. And the people that actually read the whole article will still benefit from that kind of breakdown. I think that's kind of one actionable thing that they mention. But here's the stat I was looking for. And this goes back to the zombie subscribers. And this is just kind of mind blowing. A recent study in the United States showed that 42% of paying subscribers hadn't visited the site once in a month in the last month. Who knows how long they've been subscribers, probably not brand new subscribers, but these are, they just turn into zombies. If you're not engaging with them and they're on auto renewal, it's just a matter of time until they wake up and say, I haven't looked at this in 3 months. I'm going to cancel right now, So, and that's what I'm always thinking about is like, how's this going to impact the revenue down the road? So, they say this potential for churn is the biggest single risk for the news business going forward. So like they're basically saying it's not about the intro promotion and getting your foot in the door. I mean, that you need to do that, but you really need to focus more on keeping your current subscribers. And this makes perfect sense to me as a business owner. I mean, this was one of the first things that was my major priority as the new CEO. It was like, we cannot lose customers anymore. When we lose a customer, that is a abomination. It cannot happen. We've got to fully understand what happened. We got to do everything we can to prevent it. Before that, it wasn't always like that. You know, if someone decided to leave, we wouldn't really fight for it or anything. Anyway, that's just common sense.